Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this first day of Lunchtime Poetry. My name is Lorie, and I'm the teen librarian at Manlius Library. And today I am coming to you from our children's room, and I'm going to share with you some poetry from the poetry of Robert Frost, the collected poems. Robert Frost is one of my favorites. I'll probably share more later in the month, but we're going to start with these. And the first one is a series of series of poems called The Hill Wife. Part 1, Loneliness, her word. One ought not to have to care so much as you and I care when the birds come round the house to seem to say goodbye, or care so much when they come back with whatever it is they sing. The truth being, we are as much too glad for the one thing as we are too sad for the other here, with birds that fill their breasts, but with each other and themselves and their built or driven nests. Part 2, House Fear. Always, I tell you this they learned, always at night when they returned to the lonely house from far away, to lamps unlighted and fire gone gray. They learned to rattle the lock and key, to give whatever might chance to be, warning in time to be off in flight, and preferring the out or to the indoor night. They learned to leave the house door wide until they had lit the lamp inside. Part 3, The Smile, her word. I didn't like the way he went away, that smile, it never came of being gay. Still he smiled. Did you see him? I was sure. Perhaps because we gave him only bread, and the wretch knew from that we were poor. Perhaps because he let us give instead of seizing from us, he might have seized. Perhaps he mocked at us for being wed, or for being very young, and he was pleased to have a vision of us old and dead. I wonder how far down the road he's got. He's watching from the woods as like as not. Part 4, The Oft Repeated Dream. She had no saying dark enough for the dark pine that kept forever trying the window latch of the room where they slept. The tireless but ineffectual hands that with every futile pass made the great tree seem as a little bird before the mystery of glass. It had never been inside the room, and only one of the two was afraid in an oft-repeated dream of what the tree might do. Part 5, The Impulse. It was too lonely for her there, and too wild, and since there were but two of them and no child, and work was little in the house, she was free, and followed where he furrowed field or felled tree. She rested on a log and tossed the fresh chips with a song only to herself on her lips. And once she went to break a bough of black alder. She strayed so far she scarcely heard when he called her, and didn't answer, didn't speak or return. She stood, and then she ran and hid in the fern. He never found her, though he looked everywhere, and he asked at her mother's house was she there. Sudden and swift and light as that the ties gave, and he learned of finalities besides the grave. And that is The Hill Wife. The next one is called In a Disused Graveyard. The living come with grassy tread to read the gravestones on the hill. The graveyard draws the living still, but never any more the dead. The verses in it say and say, the ones who living come today to read the stones and go away, tomorrow dead will come to stay. So sure of death the marbles rhyme, yet can't help marking all the time. How no dead will seem to come? What is it men are shrinking from? It would be easy to be clever and tell the stones men hate to die and have stopped dying now forever. I think they would believe the lie. And finally today, our singing strength. It snowed in spring on earth so dry and warm, the flakes could find no landing place to form. Hordes spent themselves to make it wet and cold, and still they failed of any lasting hold. They made no white impression on the black. They disappeared as if earth sent them back. Not till from separate flakes they changed at night to almost strips and tapes of ragged white did grass and garden, ground confess it snowed, and all go back to winter but the road. Next day the scene was piled and puffed and dead. The grass lay flattened under one great tread, borne down until the end almost took root. The rangy bough anticipated fruit, with snowballs cupped in every opening bud. The road alone maintained itself in mud, whatever its secret was of greater heat, from inward fires or brush of passing feet. In spring, more mortal singers than belong to any one place cover us with song. Thrush, bluebird, blackbird, sparrow, and robin throng. Some to go further north to Hudson Bay, some that have come too far north back away. Really a very few to build and stay. Now was seen how these like belated snow. The fields had nowhere left for them to go. They'd soon exhausted all there was in flying. The trees they'd had enough with once trying and setting off their heavy powder load. They could find nothing open but the road. So there they let their lives be narrowed in by thousands the bad weather made a ken. The road became a channel running flocks of glossy birds like ripples over rocks. I drove them underfoot in bits of flight that kept the ground, almost disputing right of way with me from apathy of wing, a talking twitter all they had to sing. A few I must have driven to despair, made quick asides, but having done in air, a whir among white branches great and small, as in some too much carven marble hall, where one false wing beat would have brought down all, came tamely back in front of me, the drover, to suffer the same driven nightmare over. One such storm in a lifetime couldn't teach them, that back behind pursuit it couldn't reach them. None flew behind me to be left alone. Well, something for a snowstorm to have shown the country's singing strength thus brought together, that though repressed and moody with the weather, was none the less there ready to be freed and sing the wild flowers up from root and seed. And that is called Our Singing Strength. And talking of snow in spring is pretty appropriate for Central New York. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Lorie. I'm the teen librarian at Manlius Library, and you can find me here on the Lunchtime Poetry playlist on our YouTube channel every weekday in April at noon for some lunchtime poetry. Thanks for joining me. Happy poetry.